Next up, Eamon Doogie. She is the CEO and managing partner of ShiftRight Consulting. That's a human capital firm with a passion for change. In fact, they specialize in change. And as we've heard from some of our previous speakers, change is upon us, right? This is one of our sort of prevailing trends here. Eamon herself, she's got 16 years of managing enterprise change for big companies, public, private sector, and lots of mining companies as well. And her passion is in helping organization and individuals decomplicate the process of change. Given that it's inevitability, we might as well make it simpler, easier, maybe even fun. In fact, her motto is change done well is change made easy. So welcome, Eamon, and thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I just want to make sure you can see my screen. I don't have a ton of slides, just two, but I'm just going to share and let me know if you can see it.
It looks like it's loading. Do you want to say your stuff and then we'll chat after?
No, I'm ready to just jump into any questions. So I will just preface that so my topic is transitioning to low carbon value chains as a perspective to attracting the talent of the future. So this is a topic that resonates with me personally, and very happy to engage in conversation. I think the best way we can learn is through questions and answers, and I want to keep it really informal. So I'll let you get started, Erica.
Love it. No, that's great. Thanks for clarifying, Eamon. If you want to just hit your present button so we can see your whole slide there. I know there's good stuff on there. We want to be able to see it. Beautiful. Well, yeah, again, I just love, and this is a great example of how Artemis members think, so many different interesting perspectives, personal stories, a passion for making a change in the industry. And Eamon is no exception here. So when she made her pitch to us to say, hey, to deal with the talent crisis, we need to transition to low carbon value chains. I said to her, and I'll ask her again now so she can tell you how that's all connected. What is the correlation or what is the connection between attracting talent in this current day and into the future and low carbon value chains? Unpack that for us, please, Eamon.
Yeah, sure. So thank you for the question, Erica. I think before we actually delve into what's the correlation, we need to take a step back and look at the demographic changes that are happening, not just within the Canadian mining workforce, but within the global workforce internationally. And so what we're seeing is that there's a powerful shift that's underway, driven by the collective force of the centennials, people born after 1997, the millennials, people born after 1980, and the alpha generation, which is people born after 2010. So as they have entered the workforce, what we're seeing is we're noticing a significant shift in the employee value proposition. And I like to call this generation a generation of stewards. So what is causing the shift? It's because these individuals have grown up in an environment where discussions about sustainability and climate change and its implications have been woven into the daily fabric of their life. They are one of the first generations that is starting to see the impact of a lack of environmental stewardship on the quality of their lives and the implications it has for future generations. So what this means is they have been driven by a profound sense of responsibility to make a positive impact from a sustainability perspective, but also as a consideration when it comes to their career choices. And what I wanted to kind of present just up here on the screen is this really interesting statistic, because mining is at a crossroads, right? We're at a time where there is a ton of pressure to moving to net zero emissions. A lot of, at the same time, a lot of the way that we perform mining operations is changing significantly as we move to robotics and machine learning. And then in collaboration with that, we're noticing some interesting statistics, which is why I say it all comes down back to the employee value proposition. So the statistics on the slide here, which are provided by the mining industry of the HR Council, tells us that by 2030, between 80 to 120,000 new hires will be required for the mining industry. Conversely, the stat below it tells us that 70% of people aged 15 to 30 would not consider a career in mining. And if we cross compare that to another country like the US, we see very recently in a survey by Gartner, less than 1% of recent graduates in 2020 with an MBA degree would consider a career in energy extractives or the mining industry. So you're in a situation where you're dealing with multiple, often conflicting requirements, a need to reduce your emissions, a greater need for production of minerals, and increased regulatory force, and then a generational workforce that is shifting what it means to be employed by a traditional organization. And what we're seeing emerging is the concept of sustainable talent. And so you wonder, okay, so what is sustainable talent and what does that mean? So sustainable talent is an organization's ability to continuously attract, develop, and retain people with the capabilities and the commitment needed for the current and future organizational success. So sustainable talent, basically, it revisits the employee value proposition, and it looks to align its offerings with what the demands are on the market. So it looks to see, what is it that our key talent is asking for and demanding, and how do we address it? But not how do we address it superficially? How do we address it pragmatically? How do we address it intentionally? How do we address it strategically? And how do we address it transparently? And by doing that, they're then able to reposition their organization's offering in a way that is not just aligned with what the talent of the future requires, but is embedded in their longer term strategy and operations. Does that answer the question or give you more questions? Happy to answer more questions.
Yes, I think lots more questions. Absolutely. And it's fascinating. And I so appreciate you taking the time to really flesh out the problem we're solving or kind of the landscape that we're looking at right now, because it is different than it's been a generation ago, even maybe 5 years ago, pre-pandemic. All of these different things are shifting and changing. And I'd love to know what you see as far as the mining industry. How are they reacting to this so far? What are they doing?
Yeah, I think your comment on COVID is a great example, right? Or this transition. We're already seeing a change in our workforce and our work practices, certainly prompted by COVID, but we're not returning to a 5-day in-office work week, right? And this is a response to the talent demanding changes, but it equally parallels curbing commuting-related emissions, right? Paving a path to a low carbon future, remote and hybrid work practices. And organizations that are seizing this as an opportunity versus a challenge to the traditional ways of doing this are actually reaping the benefits. So they're using the introduction of COVID as an accelerated path to what the future could look like. And so, how are they doing it? They're nurturing eco-conscious workplaces. They're leveraging eco-friendly policies and advancing them now as opposed to waiting for the future. So even things like going paperless is becoming more of a focus, encouraging communal commutes, right? Adopting renewable energy sources, focusing on source one emissions where they have a direct ability to influence it, and then also focusing on source two and source three emissions through vendor partnerships, right? Having more transparency in their emissions data, but then equally working with their suppliers to enforce more requirements when it comes to second and third source emissions as well. What we're also seeing is an understanding that organizations are recognizing that the talent crisis is going beyond mining. With this move towards new ways of working, it's happening across the extraction industry, right? So we're seeing it in oil and gas, we're seeing it in mining, we're seeing it in energy. And what that means is that the pool of resources that everybody contends for is the same pool of people. So how do you make sure that you're attracting the caliber of talent that you want? And one of the things that I've seen proactive mining organizations do is start to look at local sourcing as a longer term sustainable strategy for recruitment versus traditionally a place where they have focused on limited skilled resources that are doing very traditional mining operations, right? So organizations that have invested in a mine, that's a long-term investment, right? That is a life cycle investment. are now shifting that value proposition to say, well, what does that mean for how we invest in the communities in which we're embedding? Talent is a crisis. How do we develop that source talent in the pool that we're already existing with? But how do we do it in a way that either has a net neutral impact on the environment or in a positive one through investment in communities, through the cyclical economy, through ensuring that there's practices that focus not just on financial profitability, but also on ecological impact within those communities, and working closely with governments, NGOs, and not necessarily looking at these partner organizations as opposition, but as potential allies.
I love how you've connected there just at the end, Eamon. You talked about government and NGOs that are allies, right? And it reminds me of what we talked about a little bit earlier in the lineup, with saying that this is one of the #1 characteristics or capacities that we need to develop within the mining industry's leaders, is this ability to be relational and to be collaborative. And it seems as though what you're drawing is a bit of a broader picture to show how this doesn't just play out within one mining site or one mining company, but really more broadly across those connections to the members of the supply chain and the communities and the administrations where these mining companies are organizing.
Yeah, exactly. And that's why when I say when we're tackling the problem of talent management, it is impossible to look at it only from the lens of the Canadian mining industry, right? Because naturally, as a mining organization, you are having global operations. You're in multiple different geographies that are contending with different issues, whether it's inflation or it's regulatory change or it's gender-based diversity or inclusion, or it's their own environmental goals for their carbon emission reductions. So having the perspective of this certainly is a challenge for mining, but it's a challenge for the industry and multiple other industries. So becoming a contender when it comes to attracting that talent requires you to think outside of the box. It requires you to think of innovative solutioning, such as partnering with people and organizations that maybe traditionally have been stakeholders and not necessarily allies or partners in the same way that they need to be in the future.
No, that's great. Thank you, Eamon. And we're almost at time already. You've given us so much to think about here, and you rhymed off several very profound examples of organizational change that mining companies can think about, right? So local sourcing, cyclical economies, investing in community, lowering their ecological footprint, looking at supply chain transformation. And I see that's exactly where you're going here in terms of showing what some of those solutions can look like and how leaders in our audience can learn a bit more about you and get in contact to see how you might collaborate. And there's 2 minutes left.
Okay, sure. So maybe what I'll do is just very quickly go through some of the solutions, because I do want to connect the dots. So we talked at the beginning about the change in the talent demographic. And so one of the key things is the importance of transparency. It doesn't matter where you are on the journey, so long as you're honest that you are on the journey in some capacity. And so one of the first things is promote better value chain transparency. Talk about what it is you are currently doing to reduce your emissions, to look at innovative solutions. You may not be at the end goal, and none of us are, but the transparency is the foundation of any emissions strategy. And it helps your organizations understand where you are, but it equally helps the prospective talent understand your journey and why they would like to be a part of it. The second is obvious, and is something most organizations are doing, which is to become an early adopter, to invest in leading technology. And that will, again, help you stand against the competition, because it's attracting the type of talent that we're increasingly seeing the move towards: machine learning, AI, and data analytics. The third is setting better value chain standards. So as we're talking about cross-industry partnerships, we can equally influence second and third source emissions through the standards that we have in our existing vendor partnerships, right? So work with vendors, and if you are intentionally and strategically committed, that does require you to revise your supply chain, value chain propositions as well. And the final, and I think the one that's often most underrated and overlooked, is to share, promote, and celebrate. So share your progress, be transparent about what's working, what's not working, what you're learning, promote the innovative solutioning, and celebrate your achievements. And some of the organizations that have done a great job of this have been transparent a little bit about their prototypes. So what are they testing, and why is this cool? Why is it cool to be part of this organization? Because what is the problem we're trying to solution? And demonstrate the critical role that mining actually does play when it comes to transitioning to alternative energy sources.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Eamon. We so appreciate your thought leadership. You're always such a source of great ideas and inspiration, and you're getting some virtual applause. Thank you very much. Please pop your contact info into the chat so that people can follow up with you. We are going to be sending out some follow-up emails as well so that you can look up our speakers and get in touch with them if you'd like. Thank you so much, Eamon. We're going to move to the next speaker.
Thank you.